The bridal suite door was slightly open when I heard the words that stopped my heart. Good. Lila is here. Once the ceremony starts, she'll walk down the aisle instead of her. Me. I froze in the hallway, my bouquet clutched tightly in both hands. White roses. I had picked them myself 3 months ago. One petal fell silently to the carpet. From inside the room, I heard Tristan's sister let out a short, nervous laugh, the kind people make when they know something is very wrong. She won't find out until after the ceremony, right? Then came the voice I knew best. My fiancé. The man I was supposed to marry in less than an hour. That's probably best. My stomach dropped so fast I pressed my hand against the wall to keep from falling. They were planning to replace me with his ex-girlfriend and my own wedding. My name is Savannah Cole. I was 31 years old, and 30 minutes before that moment, I had been the happiest woman alive. I had believed in Tristan Hale completely. I had believed in us. But standing in that hallway, something became very clear. I had been a placeholder all along. The wedding was still happening, just not the way they planned. I stood there long enough to hear Gloria Hale speak about Lila the way people speak about royalty. She called her refined, graceful, a natural fit for the family. She had never used words like that for me. I was the girl who helped save their family business 3 years ago. I had been useful, reliable, but never truly wanted. I was still processing this when footsteps appeared behind me. I turned quickly. It was Caleb Rourke, Tristan's best man. Tall, dark-haired, always quietly observant. He had been around since before the engagement. Always polite, kind even, but we had never been particularly close. Until now. He looked at me, then at the door, then back at me. His face told me everything. He had heard it too. Neither of us spoke for a long moment. We just stood there in the hallway, faint wedding music drifting up from below, while the world I had built quietly cracked open beneath my feet. Caleb pulled me down the corridor until we were far enough away that no one could hear us. He exhaled slowly, the way someone does when they've been holding something in for too long. You heard all of it? He asked quietly. I nodded. They've been planning this for weeks, he said. Those words hit harder than anything I had heard through that door. Weeks. Not hours. Not some desperate last-minute decision. Weeks of deliberate, quiet planning, which meant Tristan knew. He had known and said nothing. He had looked me in the eye over dinner. He had held my hand and talked about our future, while knowing his family was arranging for someone else to stand at the altar. The humiliation moved through me like cold water. But something else moved through me too. Something harder and more focused. I had spent 3 years giving everything I had to the Hale family. My time, my expertise, my complete trust. And they had spent weeks planning to discard me the moment I was no longer needed. That imbalance was about to be corrected. I need to go back 3 years to explain what was really at stake. When I met Tristan at a business conference, I was a corporate finance consultant with a strong reputation for turning around struggling companies. Tristan was charming, and on our second date he was honest. His family's construction company, Hale & Sons, was in serious trouble. Debt was mounting. Contracts were falling apart. I fell in love with Tristan. But I also genuinely wanted to help. Over the following year, I restructured their finances, brought in 2 investors, and renegotiated outstanding debts. I worked evenings and weekends. I turned down a promotion at my own firm. Gloria thanked me endlessly during those months. She called me the daughter she never had. She cooked Sunday dinners and always saved me the seat beside Tristan. I believed every word of it. Standing in that hallway now in my wedding dress, I finally understood what those warm meals and kind words had really been. Payments. Made to keep me working. Until I was no longer needed. Caleb filled in the rest as we stood in that corridor. Lila Voss had been Tristan's girlfriend before me. They had dated 4 years before she ended things abruptly. No apologies, no long explanations. She simply walked away to chase a wealthier life. She came back 2 months ago. Caleb wasn't certain what had changed, whether it was regret, or the fact that the wealthy life she chased hadn't delivered what she expected. But she returned, and the Hale family welcomed her without hesitation. Gloria had always adored Lila. In her mind, Lila was the right kind of woman, polished, well-connected, from old money. The kind of woman who looked correct in formal photographs. I was not that woman. Caleb told me Lila had been meeting privately with Gloria for 6 weeks, planning the replacement carefully and quietly, and Tristan had known for at least 3 of those weeks. He had held my hand, looked me in the eye and said nothing. I found Tristan alone in the groom's preparation room. He turned and gave me that easy, familiar smile, the one that had once made me feel completely safe. "You look beautiful," he said. I didn't return the smile. "Is your ex here?" I asked. The smile faded slowly like a light being dimmed. "My mom invited her," he said carefully. "But I didn't think it would go this far. I thought she'd just be a guest." "Are you going to stop them?" I asked. A pause. Longer than the first. "I think we should get through today," he said quietly. "Then we'll talk to my mom and sort everything out." There it was. He wasn't going to stop them. He was choosing the easier road and quietly asking me to walk it beside him. I nodded once, turned, and walked out without another word. He had 3 weeks to choose me. He had chosen silence every single time. I had my answer. I walked back into the bridal suite with my chin up and my face completely still. Gloria was near the window. She turned and gave me a wide, warm smile. "Savannah, you look stunning, sweetheart." "Thank you, Gloria," I said. I watched her eyes search my face for cracks. I gave her nothing. I smiled back just as warmly. Her shoulders relaxed. That was her mistake. Because in that moment, something inside me made a quiet decision, the kind I had learned to make in years of corporate negotiations when the other side believed they had the upper hand. When the other side underestimates you, you don't correct them. You use it. I excused myself to touch up my makeup. I sat in front of the mirror and looked at my own reflection for a long, steady moment. The dress was perfect. The flowers were beautiful. The chapel was filled with guests who had traveled to be here. None of that was going to waste. The wedding was happening. Every piece of it. Just not the ending they had written. Caleb knocked softly on the side door 10 minutes later. I let him in and closed the door behind us. He told me something that confirmed every quiet suspicion I had carried for months. 3 weeks before the wedding, Gloria had pulled 2 of the company's key investors aside at a private dinner. She had told them her son was making a mistake, and that it would soon be corrected. She had been using my professional name and reputation to hold their confidence in the business steady, while secretly planning to remove me entirely. They had used me right until the last possible moment. I sat with that for a few seconds. Then I straightened my back, checked my bouquet, and looked at Caleb directly. "I'm still getting married today," I said. He stared at me. "Good," I added calmly. When he saw the expression in my eyes, something shifted in his face. Not confusion. Understanding. Caleb told me something then that I hadn't expected. He had been watching the way the Hale family treated me for nearly 2 years. The way Gloria spoke over me at dinner tables. The way Tristan went quiet whenever she made a cutting remark, never saying a word in my defense. He had stayed silent because Tristan was his oldest friend. He had told himself it wasn't his place. But when he heard the plan, when he understood they were going to humiliate me in front of everyone I loved, he could no longer stay quiet. "I should have said something earlier," he admitted. "I'm sorry I didn't." I studied him carefully. Caleb Rourke was honest in the way that very few people managed to be. Not because it was easy, but because he couldn't be anything else. "You're saying something now," I told him. He met my gaze without looking away. "Tell me what you need," he said. For the first time all morning, I didn't feel completely alone. I saw Lila for the first time just after 11 o'clock. She came around the corner of the back corridor as I was passing through. She didn't notice me at first. She was looking down at her phone. Hair perfectly styled, posture practiced and straight. She was wearing a white dress. Not identical to mine, but close enough. Long and fitted, with delicate lace at the neckline. The kind of dress a woman wears when she wants to be mistaken for the bride. When she looked up and saw me, she stopped. Her expression moved quickly. Surprise, discomfort, then something trying to look like confidence. "Savannah," she said. "Just my name." "Lila," I replied. We looked at each other for 3 seconds. Then I kept walking. I didn't run. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't give anything away. But as I turned the corner, one quiet thought settled clearly in my mind. She had walked back into this family with a white dress and an invitation from a mother-in-law who had always preferred her. She had not come back with a plan that accounted for me. Just before noon, I heard raised voices near the back of the chapel. I positioned myself close enough to listen without being seen. It was Tristan and Gloria. His voice was low and tense. Hers carried the certainty of someone who had never expected to be questioned. "Lila should be the one walking down that aisle," she said firmly. "This is what is right for this family. Mom, we can't do this today. Not like this." "All you have to do is nothing," she replied. "Just let it happen." A silence followed. Tristan said nothing. He didn't object. He didn't refuse. He didn't say my name or defend a single thing we had built together. He chose silence. I leaned against the wall and closed my eyes for one breath. Any remaining hope that Tristan might find the courage to choose me had just been extinguished. He had chosen the easy road, and I had chosen mine. By 12:15 the chapel was full. Nearly 200 guests settled into the pews. My mother sat in the front row wearing the pale blue dress she had shown me on a video call the week before. My brother and his wife sat beside her. My closest friends filled the row behind. The Hale family's guests occupied the opposite side. Some already knew about the plan. I could tell by the way they kept glancing toward the back of the chapel, waiting for the story to unfold. The whole room was a stage. Gloria had designed it that way. My humiliation was meant to be witnessed by everyone who mattered to me. The kind of public shame that follows a person for years. I watched her take her seat in the front row and smooth her skirt with a quiet, satisfied expression. She believed the story was about to end her way. I had no intention of correcting that belief. Not yet. Caleb found me one final time before the ceremony. He appeared in the doorway of the waiting room, studying me with steady eyes. "You're sure about this?" he asked. "Yes," I said. He stepped inside and looked at me directly, the way very few people actually do. "You need to hear something before we go in," he said quietly. "You didn't deserve any of this. Not the way they treated you. Not the way Tristan stayed silent. You gave this family everything, and they were never honest about your place in it." I held his gaze. "You deserve someone who looks at you and chooses you," he said. "Not someone who waits to see which choice costs him the least." Those words settled into me differently than anything else had that morning. They didn't fix what had been broken, but they were completely true. "Thank you, Caleb," I said quietly. He nodded once. Then he gave me a small, steady look, the kind that means I'm with you, and walked toward the chapel. I followed 2 minutes later. Naomi caught me in the corridor just before the processional music began. Tristan's younger sister had always existed uncomfortably between her mother's world and her own conscience. She pulled me aside with a light touch on my arm, her face pale. "I told her not to do this," she whispered. "Weeks ago, when she first explained the plan. I told Mom it was cruel." "What did she say?" I asked. Naomi's expression cracked. "She said the humiliation would make you leave quietly, without causing a scene." I absorbed that carefully. "And Tristan? He knew everything by the 3rd week," she said. "I kept waiting for him to stop it. He kept saying he'd handle it later." She shook her head. "Later never came." "Did you ever think about telling me yourself?" I asked. She looked down at her shoes. That was answer enough. I touched her arm briefly, not with cruelty, just enough to let her know I had heard her. Then I turned toward the chapel doors. I had everything I needed now. The processional music began at 12:30. From the back of the chapel, I could see Tristan standing at the altar. His jaw was tight, his posture stiff. Caleb stood to his right, composed and still. Tristan turned and saw me in the doorway. His whole body relaxed. A quiet, relieved smile crossed his face. He exhaled as though he had been holding his breath for the past hour. He thought the crisis had passed. He thought I had accepted the morning's events and decided to carry on. He thought everything was fine. I smiled back. A real smile, not sharp, not cruel. The kind I wore in boardrooms when I already knew exactly how the numbers were going to fall. The guests rose as the doors opened. 200 pairs of eyes landed on me. I walked forward, steady and unhurried, white roses in both hands. For a few minutes, everything looked exactly like a wedding should. The music played. The light fell through the chapel windows. The room was warm with the presence of everyone who had come, and every person believed it was going exactly as planned. The ceremony began the way all ceremonies do, with words about love, commitment, and the life two people build together. Pastor Wells spoke in a calm, warm voice about choosing each other every day, about trust that holds when things become difficult, about love as a decision, not just a feeling. I stood at the altar across from Tristan and listened to every word. When Pastor Wells spoke about choosing each other, Tristan's eyes met mine. For a brief moment I saw something honest in them, something that looked like real regret or genuine love or both. But love without the courage to act on it protects no one. I had come to understand that very clearly this morning. Behind Tristan, Caleb stood with a quiet alertness in his posture, a readiness that told me he had not forgotten a single word of what we discussed. The guests sat in comfortable silence. 200 people who believed this was unfolding exactly as planned. To my left, I felt Gloria watching from the front pew. Satisfied. Certain. Waiting. She had no idea my move was already in motion. We reached the part of the ceremony where Pastor Wells paused for the ring exchange. Tristan reached into his jacket. His hands were steady, but his jaw had been tightening gradually. Some instinct had registered that my calmness was not the calmness of someone who had simply moved on. I looked at the ring he was holding, a round-cut diamond set in a simple gold band. I had mentioned once, early in our relationship, that I preferred simple over showy. He had remembered. That detail made something ache briefly in my chest. I had loved Tristan Hale with complete sincerity. That was the truth. I had chosen him deliberately and without reservation. But you cannot love a person into having the courage to protect you when it costs them something. I had spent 3 years quietly learning that. Pastor Wells smiled gently and continued. Before we proceed, he said in the traditional way, I ask, is there anyone present who believes this union should not take place? Standard words. Ceremonial. Usually followed by silence. But behind me I heard the sound of a pew creaking. Then a voice. The voice was Lila's. She stood from the 4th row on the Hale family side, calm, composed in her almost wedding dress, and spoke clearly enough for the entire chapel to hear. I object. The silence that followed was absolute. Then it broke into a wave of sound. Whispers moved from pew to pew. Someone near the back exhaled sharply. Heads turned in every direction. Tristan and I have loved each other since we were 22, she said. I made a terrible mistake when I left. This marriage is a mistake that hasn't happened yet. There is still time. I didn't move. I stood at the altar and let the moment exist exactly as it was. From the corner of my eye, Gloria straightened in her seat with barely contained triumph. Across the aisle, I felt my mother's shock arrive like a physical thing. Pastor Wells looked between Lila and the altar with visible alarm. Tristan's face had gone completely white. He was looking at me now with wide, panicked eyes. And I could see that in that moment, he was genuinely afraid of what I was about to do. Good. I turned to face the room slowly. 200 people were looking at me. Some with sympathy. Some with confusion. Some on the Hale side with a barely masked expectation that I was about to break down. I didn't. I walked 2 deliberate steps forward and spoke in a voice that carried without being raised. I know about the plan, I said. The whispering stopped completely. I found out this morning. Lila was not an uninvited guest today. She was brought here deliberately, dressed in white, with the full knowledge and encouragement of the Hale family, including the groom. Tristan made a strangled sound behind me. 3 years ago, I restructured this family's company when it was weeks from collapse. I found their investors. I renegotiated their debts. I gave up career opportunities to keep their business alive. I let that settle. I was useful to them, I said clearly. And this morning they decided I was finished being useful. The room was silent in the way that feels thick, like air before a storm. Gloria's expression had completely changed. The satisfaction was gone. What replaced it was the look of someone who had badly miscalculated. I wasn't finished. I turned and looked directly at Gloria. She was in the front row, hands folded, face locked into composure. But her eyes had changed entirely. The triumph I had seen earlier was gone, replaced by the expression of someone who cannot find a way to undo a serious mistake. 3 weeks before this wedding, I said, Gloria Hale met privately with the company's investors. She told them her son was making a mistake that would soon be corrected. She used my name and my professional reputation to keep their confidence in the business, while planning to remove me the moment I was no longer needed. A sharp movement came from near the back. One of those investors was seated there. He had gone very still. Tristan stepped forward from the altar. Savannah, please. I'm not angry, I said to the room. I'm not humiliated. And I am not leaving quietly. I looked at my mother in the front row. Her expression had moved from shock to something fierce and entirely certain. Then I looked at Gloria one final time. You planned this beautifully, I told her quietly. But you forgot to plan for me. Tristan reached for my hands quickly. His face was pale and urgent, his voice dropping low. Savannah, please. I know I handled everything wrong. But I do love you. We can still fix this. Walk out right now, just the two of us. I looked down at his hands holding mine. 3 years ago, those same hands had reached for me after a 15-hour workday trying to save his family's company. He had called us a team, said we were building something together. I had believed every word completely. Do you love me, Tristan? I asked quietly. Yes, he said immediately. Then why didn't you stop them? He opened his mouth, then closed it. You had 3 weeks, I said gently. 3 weeks to tell me the truth, to protect me, to simply choose me. And every time you chose silence. His eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry, he whispered. I believed that he meant it. But an apology delivered in public after the damage is done, with 200 witnesses watching, that has never been the same thing as being chosen. Never will be. I stepped back from Tristan gently. He let my hands go. His shoulders dropped. He looked like someone who had finally understood the full weight of choices made long ago, too late to change any of them. I turned back to face the chapel. The room was completely still. Even the children in the back rows had gone quiet. Afternoon light came through the tall western windows in long golden bars, falling across the stone floor like something deliberate. I looked at my mother. She was watching me with the expression she'd worn when I was 12 years old and gave a speech at a school assembly. Completely proud, completely present. I looked at all the people who had made the effort to be here. Then I thought about what the past 3 years had cost me. My career advancement. My trust. My complete belief in a family that had smiled at me warmly while planning my disposal. I let that sit for exactly 1 breath. Then I lifted my chin and spoke clearly. The wedding is still happening, I said. The room erupted. People leaned forward. Conversations broke out everywhere. Gloria gripped the pew in front of her. Pastor Wells looked at me carefully. I nodded at him once. I turned away from the altar. Away from Tristan, who stood completely still, his face moving quickly toward real understanding. I looked toward the groomsmen's side, where Caleb was standing. He was watching me. His expression was impossible to read entirely, but there was something in it that looked very much like hope. Caleb, I said. My voice was steady. The chapel was so quiet I didn't need to raise it. Will you join me? For one long moment nothing moved. Then Caleb walked forward. He came down with measured, unhurried steps and stopped in front of me. For a second it was just the two of us at the altar with 200 people watching. He knew what was being planned for today, I told the room. He was the only person who was completely honest with me this morning. He is the only person who stood beside me without any condition attached to it. Then I looked at Caleb directly and spoke quietly, just for him. I'm not asking for a performance, I said. I'm saying that when this is over, if you want to build something honest, I am ready to try. He held my gaze for a long moment. Then slowly, clearly he nodded. Everything happened at once. Gloria was on her feet before the noise had fully risen, her voice cutting above the chaos. This is absolutely insane. You cannot do this. Both parties are present and willing, Pastor Wells said with quiet firmness. No law has been broken. Tristan hadn't moved from where I had left him. He was looking at Caleb with an expression that traveled from disbelief to something far more wounded. The hurt in his face was real. But every event leading to this moment had been set in motion by his own choices. From the back of the chapel, the investor I had noticed earlier was already moving toward the exit, phone in hand. Several of Gloria's guests began standing to leave. The murmuring grew and then slowly thinned. Lila sat back down. Whatever she had imagined this day would bring, it was not this. She looked smaller now. Naomi had covered her face with both hands. Tristan looked at me one final time. A long, honest look that carried everything he hadn't been able to say, then turned and walked to the side door. He didn't slam it. He simply left. The room grew quiet. Shall we continue? Pastor Wells asked. Caleb looked at me. I looked at him. Yes, we said together. It has been 7 months since that afternoon in the chapel. I won't tell you everything was simple afterward. It wasn't. There were honest, difficult conversations. Things that needed to be sorted through carefully. Caleb and I had been truthful from the beginning, with each other and with everyone who asked. We had not been secretly in love for years. What we built slowly and with our eyes completely open. But what we built was real. Hale & Sons lost 2 key investors in the weeks following the wedding. Once the full story spread, the trust my professional reputation had quietly held in place was gone. Gloria's plan had depended on replacing me invisibly. Instead, she had made the replacement visible to every person in that room. I heard through a mutual contact that Tristan began seeing a therapist. I was genuinely glad for him. He was not a cruel man. He was a weak one. Those are not the same thing, but weakness causes real damage all the same. Lila left town quietly within a month. I built my own financial consulting practice. Chose clients who deserved honesty. Came home every evening to someone who had chosen me, not because I was useful, but simply because he wanted to. They had tried to replace me. In the end, they replaced the wrong person. And I walked away with everything that actually mattered.